Mr. Chairman, I have an article from the Wall Street Journal's Market Watch I'd like to submit for the record. The article expresses concern and frustration with an amendment passed last week by my Republican colleagues as part of the National Defense Authorization Act, which restricts the Pentagon's use of climate science studies, including the IPCC, which we are discussing today, as part of its strategic military planning. The article in the Journal states that, quote, GOP science deniers have crossed the line. They are now messing with national security. America is now under attack from an enemy within, irrational science, denialism, a toxic mindset, a spreading self-destructive mental virus. Yes, this is war on America. The military, unquote. The military has been using this climate science research for decades now, and the research studies show that they are essential part of our national defense. And Mr. Chairman, because of that, I would like to move to include this article as part of the record.
Without objection, that article will be made a part of the record.
And I have a question for Dr. Botkin, excuse me if I pronounced the name wrong, Dr. Pielke and Dr. Toll. You all cite John Christie as an example of someone whose model should be considered in the IPCC process. Christie famously used tropospheric temperature records from satellite data to show little evidence of warming. Those results were challenged by two peers, resulting in Dr. Christie acknowledging very serious errors in his data and correcting these results, which meant that his models then showed warming. Somehow, since this acknowledgment in Science magazine, Dr. Christie has returned to showing no significant change in global temperature. My question for you is, which Christie models should the IPCC rely on?
Could I just...
Well, let me mention that one. I worked closely with John Christie. I was there when that error was discovered. It was not a major error. He corrected it, and everything since then has moved forward. In fact, he actually has slightly more warming than the RSS data, which is another group that analyzes tropospheric data. These are not models. He's working with satellite data, so it's not a model. His model comparisons are taking the models that are available to anyone from the IPCC. So John Christie's work is accepted as being robust by the entire scientific community. I'm not aware of anyone that is critical of what he's shown. There is other evidence also presented about the models that I present in my written testimony that shows there are problems with the models.
So which models do you think that he should be using? The ones that he retracted, the ones that are consistent with other researchers, or the ones that mysteriously are consistent with his earlier work?
No, I have to correct that. He does not use a model in his analysis of the tropospheric temperatures. He uses satellite data. These are observational data sets. He then compares it with model results that are computed by other people. There's a whole range of them in my written testimony that he provided to me that are the models that are used to create the National Climate Assessment, models that are used to create the IPCC report. So that's not his model. His model is robust, always has been robust. It was a small error that he found and has been apparently blown out of proportion.
Dr. Oppenheimer, would you please comment?
There were a couple of adjustments that Dr. Christie had to make, but I think the more important point is that if you look at the IPCC report, they actually have a lengthy discussion of the difference between what models project and what Dr. Christie's data and other people's data project, show for the warming in what's called the mid-troposphere, which is only a small slice of the atmosphere, over the last 35 years. And there are discrepancies, not just between the models and the data, but between different data sources. This is an area of uncertainty. It's an area that's been looked at extensively. It's an area where the uncertainties are not completely resolved, and it can't be used to undermine the credibility of the models, particularly because the observations themselves are disparate. So this is an example of where IPCC actually has this stuff in the background report, looked at it, assessed it, and will continue to do so over the next series of assessments.
Could I correct Michael a little bit? The data that John Christie provided me is lower tropospheric data.
Fine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.